of what kind of a small business you run, YNAB's 4 rules apply to your business too, helping you align your money to your priorities. But your business priorities are different from your personal priorities. See, budgeting answers the questions, can I afford this? How much can I pay myself? And do I have enough to cover taxes and advertising, hiring extra help? Now, you've probably looked at some of the popular accounting software packages as you've searched for a tool to help you manage your business. But most of those have a lot of features you don't really need. It adds complexity, but also a steep learning curve. And while accounting software will record what has happened, most don't help you budget effectively. So let's walk through how you can use YNAB for your small business. Let's jump on over to YNAB, where I've set up a small business budget, a brand new one. Now, we recommend keeping your business budget separate from your personal budget, using your business checking account to fund that business budget. Though if your business is so small that you just use your personal account, like maybe you're a crafter, sell a few scarves on Etsy, then you could choose to just add a category group for your business expenses in your personal budget. But you will want to change the default categories like I did here so that they make more sense for your business. Now, if you are a freelancer or a consultant, maybe a life coach, this could be what your small business budget might look like. It really doesn't need to be complicated. Start with what you know you need for categories because you can always adjust and add categories as needed. Well, once your categories are set up, then you can add goals to help you plan for your business expenses. And that's exactly what I've done for this internet category, for example. My internet bill is $50 every month, so I created a monthly funding goal. I now have this yellow alert to remind me to budget for that each month. Now, rule 2, embrace your true expenses, will make sure that you're ready for these non-monthly expenses. You know, things like quarterly taxes, insurance payments. Now, I've even set up a goal for my insurance. It's something that's due in January. It's $200, but the target category balance by date goal breaks it down so I know exactly what I need to budget each month to be ready to pay that bill when it comes due. A great way to stay on top of those things. You can create a whole template for your business budget by just adding goals to all of your categories. And then you can easily plan ahead for the required income needed, and simplify budgeting when money does arrive. This quick budget section will show the total amount that's underfunded, all those goals that still need dollars. So it's a great way to plan ahead. So let's walk through what things might look like day to day if you're using YNAB for your small business, okay? Let's say I am a freelance writer. I'm going to jump over to a budget I've created here. I've set up my budget. I've added goals to help me plan. I've used rule 1. I've given every dollar in my checking account a job. And these yellow alerts remind me of underfunded categories. I'll add to these categories when more money arrives. Now you can see I've started saving for these non-monthly expenses, things like my quarterly taxes. Think about how great you're going to feel knowing you're ready for these things when they come due. Now, scheduled transactions work great for upcoming bills. They can actually be set to repeat. Let's go to my business checking account. You'll see I've got one set up here for my phone bill. It's due on the 29th. Now, it will be grayed out until that date when I can approve it, and then it will be added to my register. But I will also have this yellow alert on my budget to remind me to budget for that bill if I haven't yet. So it's a great way to stay on top of that. Now, I've also added a tracking account for my accounts receivables. This is where I can track my outstanding invoices as I wait for payment. But let's say I finished a project today for a client. I'm going to add that invoice to my accounts receivable register. We can just add a transaction here. We can enter the client's name. And I like to put the invoice number right in the memo field. That's a great way to kind of keep track of that because you can search on that field as well if you're looking for something specific. And let's say I billed them $150. So there we go. Now that adds to that accounts receivable balance. Now these tracking accounts are totally outside the budget. They really don't affect my budget at all. And they won't until I actually receive the payment and transfer those dollars to my business checking. Well, let's say I did receive some checks from a couple of clients today. Let's record the deposit that I made at the bank. And I will enter it as a transfer to my business checking account from my accounts receivable. So let's go ahead and add a transaction there. We'll transfer that from the accounts receivable. Now, because I was paid by a couple of clients, I'm going to go ahead and split this. So I've got multiple lines to work with. And the total deposit was $400. And one of those invoices that was paid was from my client Living Well magazine. I'll once again reference that invoice number right here in that memo field. It's a great way to kind of keep things controlled. 200 of those dollars were from Living Well magazine. The other 200 was payment from Jane. Once again, referencing the invoice number. And that one was $200 as well. And there we go. Now I have those dollars available to budget. But before I budget those dollars, let's jump over to my accounts receivable register one more time and just mark as cleared the deposit that I made and those invoices that were paid. So the ones that are remaining uncleared, those are the ones I'm still waiting for payment on. It's a great way to keep tabs on that. But now I can budget this money, asking myself, what do these dollars need to do before more money arrives? Well, I want to set some of this aside for taxes. So I think I'll budget 25% of this income to my quarterly taxes category, okay? Let's take 100 of those dollars and budget it to quarterly taxes so that we know we're on track for that. Now, I've still got $300 left to budget, and I know my internet and my telephone bills, those categories are still underfunded. I can use the quick budget tool to easily budget for those bills. Let's use that underfunded button, and that'll get me up to speed on those, so we're looking good. I still have $150 left to budget. Well, let's budget that to my owner's draw category, shall we? Setting those aside for my own pay. Very cool. Now, I also have some personal bills to pay, so it's time to pay myself. I see that I have a total of $900 so far available in my owner's draw category, so I'm good to go. Let's go ahead and write ourselves a check, enter that in our business checking. So we'll add a transaction there, categorizing it as owner's draw because that is the job that money's doing when it's leaving my business budget. And we'll say we wrote ourselves a check for $900. Now this accounts for that money leaving my business budget. I can now enter this money as an inflow to be budgeted to my personal budget and give this money a job for my personal priorities. So let's move on over to my personal budget. There we go. I'm going to add a transaction there as I deposit this check. Let me just say this came from business. We'll categorize it as an inflow to be budgeted. And there we go, $900. And now these dollars are available for my personal priorities. So each time income arrives, budget those dollars, and then check your budget as you track your spending. Now, establishing a regular routine really does make everything easier. Whether you update your budget daily or weekly, you're going to want good, up-to-date information in your budget. That makes for better decisions and a whole lot less stress. You're able to make those spending decisions then with confidence. A few minutes each day can really make budgeting effortless. But what happens when things don't go as planned? Well, did that computer repair cost more than you'd budgeted? Maybe an unexpected promotional opportunity came up that you really do want to take advantage of. Well, that's what Rule 3 is for. Roll with the punches. Simply move some money from another category if you need to. Because your priorities they probably will change, and it's okay to change your budget. Now, as you track your spending, YNAB is recording all that data to help you manage your business. And for tax time, you can retrieve all that information using the reports, but you can also use the register search function. It's a great way to look for specific invoices or pretty much anything that you're trying to answer a question about. So you can even export your reports and data to use in a spreadsheet like Excel or Numbers. You'll see an export budget option here as well. So be sure to check out our very next workshop coming up right after this one called Reports for Small Business to learn even more about how you can retrieve all of that data that you've accumulated. But you really do need a budget for your small business too. YNAB can give you the control you need to manage your cash and reduce your stress as you grow your business. So I know we've covered a lot of ground in a very short time, but this is a great time to type on over any questions that you may have about what we've talked about so far. So And Dave was wondering, so rule 2 in my separate business budget gives me a realistic view about what my business can afford to pay me on a sustainable basis. Absolutely. Paying yourself is one of the most important priorities I'm sure a lot of you share when you've got a business. There's little sense in running a business if you never get to pay yourself. But you do want to make sure that that pay is part of your overall financial plan. And this is one of the things that you'll find too. These true expenses are things that don't necessarily happen every month, but they are going to happen. By setting some money aside for these each month, we know that we're going to be ready for them when they happen. But it also takes into consideration the total true expenses that we're dealing with our business. So it does little good to kid yourself that you're not going to have insurance payment or advertising costs, those types of things. Plan for those things monthly, even if you don't spend for those things monthly. And that's why we call them true expenses. They're easy to overlook, but they are part of your overall expense picture. And once you know you've got these budgeted for, you'll know what you're able to go ahead and pay yourself comfortably. Now, here's one of the things I like about setting a template up for my budget as well. By using those goals, I can use this underfunded amount in the quick budget in a month, for example, that I have nothing budgeted. And that gives me a wonderful idea of the target amount I'm going to need for revenue in order to make this plan sustainable. Now, if my revenue is far short of that, I'm likely to want to change my plan to make sure that it will in fact fit. But it lets you know ahead of time. And that's the power of the budget. That awareness is really powerful. Now, Leslie was wondering, how do you set up a goal? Oh, that's a great question. If you'd like to go ahead and set up a goal, it's really easy. Just go to the category and you'll see create a goal as an option. Okay, let's go ahead and add a category here. Let's see, let's just call it, we'll just call it gas. We're going to separate our transportation out so you can see. If I want to create a goal for my gas expense, I can go to that category and you'll see an option here, Leslie, that you can create that goal. Now, a monthly funding goal allows you to go ahead and set up a goal for a specific amount each month. Target category balance by date allows us to put in a total amount we need and a date that we need to be sure and have that saved. So you get to decide what kind of goal is most appropriate, but then I will get that yellow alert reminding me to budget each month. So I hope that helps. Natika was wondering, how do you create a separate budget for your business? Just create a new account? Actually, Natika, you do not need to create a new account. Your one YNAB account will allow you to have multiple budgets. Okay, just go up to the budget name. Now, in all likelihood, you've got a personal budget set up. And if you'd like to create a new budget, just click on that name. At the very top of the list, you'll see new budget. Now, the default categories that you'll start with will be obviously more in line with a personal type of budget. And that's why I want to encourage you to go ahead and adjust those categories so they reflect your business priorities, which will be different than your personal priorities. But you can have more than one budget with your YNAB account. So you don't have to buy anything separate to be able to use YNAB for your small business. I know a lot of folks find that to be a welcome, a welcome change from what they're used to oftentimes. So Leslie was wondering what version of YNAB I'm using for the business. Is it the same as the personal YNAB example? It's exactly the same, Leslie. Yep. All I've done differently here is adjusted my categories. And you can create new categories. You can edit these categories. You can move them around. You've got a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to structure this. As a matter of fact, just to give you an idea, let me show you a couple of other category structures I've set up. I've had a music business for a lot of years. I've done lessons and sold stuff and repairs. And so I had a budget that looked a lot like this. So I created a category group just for my taxes, because that was one I like to break down by quarter. But I also had a separate category group for my cost of goods sold. Things I sold, I needed to have a place to categorize those purchases and my materials for the shop. My monthly expenses that happened each month, and I've got all my true expenses as well. Now, there's a couple other options you might choose as well. One other choice that I made, that's Schedule C on the IRS 1040. If you're a sole proprietor, you may be familiar with that. That's one of the things they like you to fill out. Now, often it's a struggle to figure out where everything lines up. Well, what I've done here is aligned these expense categories with the Schedule C. So as you go through the year, you're categorizing those expenses come year end. You've got them already lined up exactly where they need to be. Now, I have set up a separate section for taxes and payroll. Those aren't part of the Schedule C, but those are things that we want to be able to budget for as well. Okay, another option might be maybe you provide a service like a lawn maintenance business. Direct expenses sometimes are associated with providing that service. You might want to have a separate category group just for those direct expenses, like the labor, fuel, that type of thing. So you got a lot of flexibility, and you want to go ahead and edit and move this around so that it reflects what's important to you. Okay. So hopefully that helps give you some ideas of how that works. Okay, Leslie? Let me know if it helps. Natika was wondering, how did I get the tracking on the left? I added an account using the tracking account type. Okay, so Natika, if I want to add an account like that, I can go ahead and just add an account. And when I select account type, I'm going to choose one of these two tracking accounts. Now, tracking accounts are outside my budget. They're not a part of my budget, but it does give me a place to keep an eye on what's going on there. And in this case, I'm using it to track my accounts receivables. Now, if you got a really small business, yeah, maybe this really small business you don't have that many invoices. You could actually handle those invoices a little bit differently. Let me show you an alternative way that you might find helpful. If I wanted to, I could use scheduled transactions to track those invoices. So for example, let's say I did a job for a client and they're going to pay me in a couple of weeks. I could add that transaction in my business checking account register with that future date of expected payment. Okay, that will schedule it when I enter it with that future date. So let's pick on Living Well Magazine again. Once again, I like to enter those invoices numbers there. And we can enter the amount that we expected to be paid. Now that will be grayed out in the register until that date arrives. Okay, if they pay me early, I can go ahead and select that and enter it whenever I receive payment. If the 17th rolls around, I still haven't gotten paid, it's going to alert me for approval of that transaction before it adds it to the register. If I haven't been paid yet, it might be a good time to give that client a call. I could edit the date if I needed to then extend it. So if you've got relatively few invoices, you might find that to be a helpful way to track those also. Okay, so I hope that helps. Dave had a question wondering if I drag and drop those categories from one category group to another, will the history move with it? Sometimes you have to create reports for a one-off purpose. Great question, and yes, they will follow because that's associated with the category itself. And whatever structure you have set up for your categories and category groups will be reflected on your reports screen as well. Okay. Now with the reports, you do have a lot of flexibility. You can choose different categories that you want to include or exclude, dates, the accounts you want to include, and a lot of different choices there. Okay. Now, our very next workshop coming up, we are going to be talking a lot more about reports. So I'd love to have you join me for that. It's coming up in about 10 minutes. I see we are out of time now. Let me go ahead and send you over the registration link if you'd like to learn a little bit more about how you can retrieve all that data that you've got now that you've accumulated. I'd love to have you join me. I do need to go now, but because we are out of time, but if you have other questions, remember you can always reach out for help. Just use that little help icon here at the lower right-hand corner of your budget, and our support specialists are more than happy to help you, and they're very good at what they do. So don't hesitate to reach out for help. But thank you so much for being here. I hope it's been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you soon in another workshop. Till next time, happy budgeting.